Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market and figure out what happened today and what we can expect moving forward. So with all that being said and done, if you enjoyed this video, find it useful, helpful, informative, whatever, then don't forget to hit that like button as it does help a lot and I would appreciate it. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section is live. That link is of course down below. If you're interested, for just $3, $2.99 a month, I guess technically, you get access to all my intraday thoughts, posts, updates, technical analysis, options flow, etc. on Tesla every single day the market is trading. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. That link will be down in the description of the video below. But jumping into it, Tesla closing the day up a beautiful 0.8% on the day, which compared to the market is a bit of an outperformance, which is, pretty nice to see, but it's not a substantial outperformance, just a very slight outperformance, but nonetheless a still, welcome sight, especially now that NVIDIA is finally actually tanking. Maybe this will actually give Tesla room and some rotation of money back to Tesla. We'll see, of course. We don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, but with that being said and done, jumping into it, yeah, so Tesla, it's a pretty flat day, right? We had a pretty flat day, but the one thing that I do notice today that's potentially important is the fact that we do have an inside day candle. Usually inside day candles are indicators of a potential reversal signal, right? And obviously we've been in a very mini correction as of the past couple of days, right? We had this massive gap up and rally really on this massive white or green candle right here. And then of course we had 2 days of a correction, even arguably today, slightly a correction-ish. But we had an inside day candle. That could potentially mean that this correction is finally over, and hopefully next week we can start to finally move our way back up above, once again, important levels that I've mentioned before, but I'll re-mention here once again. So in other words, in order for Tesla to really make a move to the upside, at the very least, I want to see 187 broke, which is going to be above this green trend line, and above that, I think we can maybe start moving, especially if we start closing candles at least above 187 to 187.5. That would be like the minimum. If you want to get a bit more confirmation, in my opinion, about 191, which will be above this candle up here, will be even more confirmation for a move all the way back up to about $200 per share, give or take. I still believe that that is definitely in the cards, and I personally am expecting that to happen as early as next week. Honestly, I don't know exactly when. Will it be Monday? Will it even be next week? Nobody knows, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is actually next week, especially with this potential inside day candle. Potentially Monday we get an even tighter inside day candle as it kind of really builds up that move, and then we just spike up even higher. Anyways, that's kind of what I'm expecting overall. So we'll see if that actually plays out. But overall, it's a beautiful setup, right? We have, of course, stochastic still flip bullish, hasn't flipped bearish yet. RSI still looks great. MACD still looks great. We'll look over the weekly time frame really, really soon. And on top of that, a lot of cash secured puts came in on Tesla towards the later half of the day after 2 p.m. Eastern, of course, right? A lot of cash secured puts came in, and they all came in for next week. Interestingly enough, you can see all of these right here, all of them for 628, which is literally next Friday. Massive prints. A lot of them are like 600, 700,000 premium, right? They all add up to maybe like, I think 4 to 5 million, something like that. It's a pretty decent amount, right? 700,000 down here. All of them are pretty much the exact same thing. Almost all of them are for 195 strike. We had one kind of creep in here for 175 strike. Someone doing a little bit of a safer option play here. But yeah, there's a lot of cash secure puts for 195. Now, this doesn't mean that necessarily they think it will close above 195 next week. It could. It absolutely could. Then they really win. But essentially what it means is the fact that they believe that there's a good chance that Tesla moves up at least to a certain amount next week, even if that were to happen. Even if it goes to, like, let's say 190 next week, they still win. They can still exit this position and they're still up very handsomely. So, keep that in mind. That's important to understand. It doesn't mean it has to be at 195, though I don't think that's completely out of the question next week either. I think next week could be a pretty big week for Tesla. Now, some puts did come in as well over here, 600,000 premiums in a row. So about almost 2 million, we'll say here, right? Pretty much the exact same thing, right? 195 strikes also for next week, Friday. So this could be almost like a hedge, if you will, right? To more downside potential, right? Because this obviously are bullish positions, and this is especially considering it's extremely in the money. Now, these, of course, could be a bit of a hedge towards that. Maybe it's the same overall play. Who knows for sure? We don't know the full story, but, this is kind of the opposite trade, if that makes sense. Again, I think it's more of a hedge personally because there's a lot more over here than there are over here in terms of just premium involved. That's just my opinion. We'll see if that actually happens to be the case or not. But those are really nice to see for potential bullish whales coming in with some pretty bullish positions, I would argue. That's actually pretty nice to see. Now let's go over to the weekly time frame really quickly, right? The weekly time frame isn't looking too bad either. You can see we have officially broken out of this tight little range, right? This for 4 weeks in a row, we've been pretty much in this really tight range, massive wicks above and below, and pretty much every single week has closed around the same price, anywhere between about 176 to as high as about almost 180, right? That $4-ish range we kept closing regardless of these massive wicks below and above 4 weeks in a row. But this week we have officially officially finally closed not only above this little range of closures of the candles, right? But we also closed above 180 for the week as well, which is good to see. But like I said, I really want to see on the weekly chart at least above 187 to really show a weekly close above 187 to really show some further confirmation of a bullish momentum, really kicking into high gear and really taking us to that next level of about 200 to potentially even eventually $220 per share. But it's a good start regardless. Tesla, in my opinion, is looking good. It's bouncing off this volume profile. I'm feeling bullish. I have cash secured puts for next week. I'm holding my shares. I have not sold any covered calls against my shares because I really want to see how next week, or at least early next week, shapes up. I'm personally optimistic, and that's why I'm not selling covered calls until we get that potential pump that I'm waiting for. So we'll see if that actually happens or not. But obviously, weekly volume is a little bit low, but granted, it was, of course, a shorter week. So obviously, the weekly volume would be a little bit higher, probably closer to this week back all the way over here from May 20th. Is where I would assume the volume would be if we actually had the Wednesday, of course, of volume being traded, of course, right? But that's kind of the main thing I'm looking at right now for Tesla. Those are probably the major aspects that I'm kind of eyeballing right now. Obviously, the volume today was a little bit on the lower end, but higher than yesterday on a technically green day, which is always a nice thing to see as well. So that's a positive as well. And ultimately, Tesla looks good. Now, obviously, it's not all, roses and stuff. There are still some concerns potentially, right? For instance, if we start losing the very low 180s to the very high 170s, right? That would be a cause for concern. That would mean that we are getting a lot weaker than, initially anticipated. And I would expect probably a move back down to about 172, 173 right after that. And again, if we lose those levels, we probably come back down to about 170 to 168. And if we lose that, we come all the way down to 160. I personally don't think that's going to happen. I think it's a much less likelihood of it happening. I don't think it's impossible. Nothing's impossible. In my opinion, you should always be ready for, the expect the unexpected, I guess you can say, right? So I am still prepared for that. I still have I always have cash on the side ready for those kind of situations that are more unexpected, that kind of catch you off guard, and in case we do drop significantly lower than I expected. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm personally optimistic. I think worst case scenario, we just go sideways next week and we pretty much just trade roughly within this range of the high 170s to somewhere in the 180s. I don't think we'll go much lower than that personally, because so far, again, you can see back here, before was there support. Now you can see over here a lot of resistance happen around this kind of 178, 180-ish level, right? Constant rejection over here, constant rejection. And then, of course, we did officially break above it. And then we've been pretty much for the last week-ish, if you will, have been essentially taking this level now that was a massive resistance for 3 weeks over here into a support, which is a good sign to see. I like that. That's a positive. That shows more confidence in my opinion. But yeah, again, the main thing I'm trying to say here is I like the way it's looking. I like the way Tesla's setting up for next week. And I do believe that, a move to 200 potentially as early as next week can be in the cards. I'm optimistic. We'll see if that actually happens. But I think at the very least to about 190-ish should be in the cards, in my opinion, of course. But all that being said and done, thanks so much for watching. And as usual, I will see you for the next one. Peace.